Today's topic is sunscreen and sunscreen myths debunked. And so we have an amazing guest today, Sara Dudley. She is the CEO of the Sunscreen company. And Sara, I wanted you to just kind of introduce yourself and the amazing work that you do and your team does.
Yeah, thank you. So the Sunscreen company has been around now for 14 years. We started to get something in a bottle in 2008. We're a Canadian company, so everything is made in Canada, true to Canada. We actually started in Ottawa. And the idea was we had our co-founders. We're really lucky to have this kind of brain trust where it's not just we have consultants, we literally have these people with great expertise at the core of our company sitting down at the table. So we have, if it is a family company, so my father, who is a OBGYN, who's retired now, but with kind of a specialty in fetal maternal health and endocrinology. My mom, who is a dermatologist who had her practice laser derm in Ottawa for 30 some years. And then our chemist, who has been our partner since day one. And with all of those voices, I'm the CEO. I have a background in marketing, but we all have a passion about sunscreen. And it's been our mission to provide safe sunscreens, performance-based sunscreens, and to really kind of get the message out to help consumers choose, because it's still, I always say sunscreen is an iceberg, right? So the 10% that consumers see on a label and understand, but there's so much complexity that goes on behind it. So it's a challenge and it's a wonderful category to work in, but yeah, I know I can definitely understand customers and their positions that they're in.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's an amazing sunscreen. I wear it every single day, my Ava Isa. I love it so much. And if you want to get some more information about the sunscreen company, the products that they have, make sure that you follow them. Click that little arrow above my head and give Sunscreen Company a follow, and also Treehouse a follow. So with that, let's get started on some of the discussion questions that I wanted to spend some time this afternoon to talk about. So I know we're talking about sunscreen myths specifically. If you have any questions that you want to ask, please put them in the chat and Sara will answer them. But let's talk first about choosing the right sunscreen. And I think that is something that a lot of people are really intimidated with. There's so many. You walk into a drugstore or you walk into a spa or any sort of cosmetic place and you have this wall in front of you and you don't even know if you need a spray or you need a lotion, or what do you start with?
Yeah, it's such a great question. And I think it's one of the few products in life that everyone should use every single day. We use it potentially always on our face or whatever is sun exposed, but potentially to our head to toe. Everyone in the family should be using it. And there is a real health impact, right? Mm-hmm. And the problem is that you can walk into that drugstore or clinic and on that shelf of sunscreen, they all kind of speak the same language on that front label, right? SPF, broad spectrum. But there can be a big difference in quality between product A and product B. And that difference in quality is not really appreciable by a customer. And it is very confusing. And so, that was a problem in 2008 when we started. And I think it has gotten better, but it is still an issue that we see. And so the kind of easy answer because we're taking, this discussion is in Canada, but also North America, right? So we have a North American focus. There's no global regulation for sunscreen, so every market is different. But in Canada and the US, today, while we're speaking, I would say the easy answer, if you have to go and choose a sunscreen for you and your family, find a mineral one, but not just any mineral one. As close to 25% zinc oxide as possible. Okay. That is the rule of thumb. That is, we can definitely break into that more. But I know everybody just wants like something easy, right? Like you said, you're in the drugstore, you have 1,000 options. And so obviously things like texture and the format all play into it. Yeah. I personally don't recommend sprays. Okay. I just think you're not going to get the application that you're looking for because quantity matters as well. I think we've been hearing a lot about quantity, like how much sunscreen should we be applying? 2 fingers, 3 fingers, quarter teaspoon for the face, half teaspoon for the face. I always say that is important, but first you have to find quality sunscreen, right? You can't kind of hack your way out of things by just putting on enough of whatever. you hear a lot of choose a sunscreen, any sunscreen, one that you're going to wear, and just use enough of it. And unfortunately, because there's such big differences in quality, especially when we're talking about UVA performance,
Yes.
because there's that difference, you can't just use a lot of something that is actually poorly performing. So that rough guide of as close to 25% zinc oxide as possible is like the very rough guide that, you know, I know families can go into the drugstore and look for something, you know, especially as we get into the summer, and sunburn becomes a huge consideration for everyone. On a daily basis, we worry about UVA damage. But certainly, you know, I have young kids and I know you miss a spot, right? And they're out all day and then you see a sunburn and you're like, oh gosh.
Oh no.
So,
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about things to avoid. And, you know, one of the things you had mentioned was the 25% of zinc oxide. So what does that mean? What is zinc oxide? And let's kind of go down that road of maybe things that we should avoid. But let's talk first about those ingredients.
yeah, so why 25% zinc oxide? So zinc oxide is a mineral filter. I know we hear a lot about physical filters. And to be honest with you, that's a bit of a misnomer in the sense that it actually isn't working by reflection. I know we hear, oh, it reflects the light, it blocks the light. It actually works very similar to what we call chemical filters, in the sense that it's taking that UV light, it's doing an electronic shift, and it's turning it into heat. And there is no safety issue with that. It's just, you know, that's a very viable way of sunscreens working. The fact that it's not physically blocking light is not a safety issue, right? That's not why we choose a mineral sunscreen over a non-mineral sunscreen in the US or Canada. So reason why it's zinc oxide is because when we talk about protection, we're talking about broad spectrum protection, right? And I know those words are on the bottle, right? Broad spectrum. You think, okay, it says broad spectrum, I'm good. But the reason why we talk about true broad spectrum is if we were to look, so when we are doing development, right, we look at what we call attenuation curves of filters, right? If I were to look at an attenuation of your black jeans, right, you're not tanning through your black jeans. You're not getting any color through your black jeans. Black jeans are really what we can think of as like a block, right? They really truly are blocking everything. Yeah. So in a perfect world, our sunscreen would start to approximate that kind of level where it would be flat because it's uniformly protecting against UVB all the way through the longest UVA light. And we know UV light is so harmful in the sense of skin cancer, pigmentation, aging concerns, right? UVB burns skin cancer as well. So we need excellent protection through the long wave UVA light. So we want true broad spectrum protection, and we want that line to be high up. Your black jean line, it would be very high up on the y-axis, and that's because it's giving lots of protection, right? It's not enough to just protect equally. You want a lot of protection. And zinc oxide in North America, that's the ingredient to do it for you, right? Unfortunately, titanium dioxide is a mineral filter. Yes. It's helpful for improving your SPF, your UVB burning rays, and a little bit of UVA, but it's not like zinc oxide in that it's going to give you the full broad spectrum protection. Okay. Zinc oxide is the one to do it. In North America, we don't have tons of options, which is unfortunate. There are some more that are available globally that hopefully one day we'll have broader access to. But until that day, zinc oxide, why do we say 25%? Because it's not a very efficient filter, right? You can't use 3% and think that it's going to be the same as a 25%. You need to get as close to that 25% as possible. I always teach people, like, it's not like, you know, the story of like Jesus and the fishes, right? It's not some magical thing where all of a sudden 3 can equal 25%. It's just, there's no amount of treatments or dispersion technology that can make a low zinc oxide sunscreen be the same as a high concentration one. Now, we have gotten better. Like, we as a company have actually gotten better in the 14 years that we've been doing this, where we do make the zinc oxide work much more efficiently. But having said that, we still stick to 25% or 20 to 25%, depending, right? And with that, you really see the payoff in the UVA protection factor. And so it's tricky because UVA protection factor is not on the bottle, right? It just says broad spectrum. We know that broad spectrum in North America is actually kind of a weak test. Even the FDA has admitted, saying, like, yeah, it's not as meaningful as we would like it. There's lots of really poor performing UVA sunscreens that can be labeled broad spectrum.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, we would put the UVA protection factor on the bottle so you could see. So you'd be like, oh, my sunscreen has a UVA protection factor of 12. Great.
Right.
Our products tend to range from a UVA protection factor of 15 to 21. So really high and nice for a mineral sunscreen.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is really nice, especially for something that you're wearing every day. Especially, you know, people come to sunscreens for their own reasons. For me, I especially wear it for pigmentation. I'm prone to pigmentation, right? I'm prone, you know, I'm almost 40. I wear it for aging, right? All of the work that we do with our skin, I don't want it to go out the window. So you come to sunscreen for your own reasons. But certainly, I think if people understood about UVA more, they would see, oh, I can't just go and pick up anything off the shelf. Like there is some work that you have to do, and I wish that wasn't the case. I wish you could just go in, everyone would
just take something.
Right? Just pick the texture that you like and then work with it. But unfortunately, we're not there yet.
Yeah. And it's really unfortunate. And it's also just very daunting for people who just don't do their homework, I find. So, you know, when you go in, and maybe we can speak about this and things that maybe we should avoid, you know, we go into the store and we see a lot of organic products. We see the sprays. And so, you know, we see formulas that are specifically designed for children or for infants. You know, you just shared some of the really important points about zinc oxide and broad spectrum. But do those other factors really make an impact, or would you say that they're more marketing factors?
Yeah, so, you know, I personally, and like our company philosophy is that we wouldn't formulate a product with what we call the soluble organic filters that are available in North America, right? So if you're not choosing a mineral sunscreen in the US and Canada, I think most people know the kind of other common filters that we call chemical filters, right? Octinoxate, octocrylene, oxybenzone, avobenzone, homosalate, octosalate. Those are the traditional ones that you'll find, that you used to find in almost all sunscreen, right? Like it was minerals were the kind of exception, and everything else was what you call like the soluble organic filters. And the reason why, you know, we don't work with them is one, for me, performance. I just find, so avobenzone is the other ingredient that's available in the US especially, that is your long wave UVA absorber. From everything that I've seen, I don't see it perform in the way that a high concentration of zinc oxide does, especially in the UVA, right? When I look at sunscreens that rely on avobenzone for their UVA protection factor, and I look at their attenuation curves, they very much look like a mountain dipping off, right? So they start off in the UVB range, maybe they have a higher SPF, but they're really deficient in the UVA protection factor. And you see that when you do the testing. You know, we've done formulas where we test it and it's a UVA protection of 4, right? And I think if people saw that number and then compared it across labels, they'd be like, oh, a 4, right? Like that's really not giving me the payoff that I want for a daily sunscreen. And then all of the other filters are UVB filters, right? So we really don't have very much in the way of UVA protection, which is unfortunate. In Canada, there's a couple more that we do have access to. Like there are some tinosorbs that we can access, but they're just not very common. They just really haven't taken a hold of the market yet because it's also pretty new. So those other filters, performance, right? Deficient in the UVA range. And then, you know, we do have an endocrinologist, retired OBGYN, as part of our expert panel. And he's been saying since the 90s, these sunscreens that permeate into our body, like I know sometimes we talk about endocrine disruptors and people don't fully appreciate what does that mean for my health, right? Like, you know, there was a study, just to give you an example, the National Institute of Health, 2014, studied 500 couples, right, looking to get pregnant. And they looked from the time that they wanted to get pregnant to the time they actually got pregnant. And they followed them along. And what they correlated was that men who had the highest degree of oxybenzone, and I think it was their urine or their blood that they assayed, that correlated to a 30% decline in fertility. Like 30%, that's a big number.
Significant. That is
Right?
significant, yeah.
500 couples, that's not a small study sample.
Yeah.
Like, that's a meaningful number to the point where you're like, we're talking about real health issues. Now, if you're a healthy adult and you stop something that may be having an endocrine disrupting impact on your life, if you're a healthy adult, hopefully that endocrine disruption will go away and your body can go back to homeostasis. Yeah. If you're a child, if you're a young infant, if you're pregnant, or even if you're a teenager, right, going through adolescency, we know that endocrine disruption, we call them like windows of vulnerability. This is when your endocrine system is being created. It's like an ecosystem, right? Yeah. And so the mechanisms that create homeostasis, that bring you back into balance, can be damaged. And when that happens, they have much longer lasting impacts, right? So if I was choosing a sunscreen for my children, if I'm pregnant, for my adolescent even, I'm sticking with mineral sunscreens, right?
Of course, yes.
Looking for filters that don't permeate into the body, and then therefore there's no risk for endocrine disruption. If it's not getting in, there's no risk for it. So everyone has their own level of risk that they're willing to accept. But then I always say, you hear a lot of like, well, the poison is in the dose, right? The poison is in the dose, poison is in the dose. And I'm like, okay, but what is the dose for a young infant or in utero? We don't know, because very small doses can have a huge impact in those vulnerable stages. Yes. But also, what is the benefit? And this is, again, a point that my father, who is especially passionate about sunscreen, has always made. What is the benefit of these ingredients, right? That we're kind of debating the risk. But let's debate the benefit. And unfortunately, they're mostly poorly performing in terms of what we just talked about, right? In terms of UVA, in terms of even SPF. Sometimes the SPF is not accurate in terms of what they're delivering. So if we wanted to debate about the risk-benefit analysis, which is what physicians do, practitioners do, of an ingredient, then let's, and if it was like a really great UVA filter, then let's discuss it. But for an ingredient that really is not bringing anything to the table, like oxybenzone, we've gone back to having to discuss whether we should have oxybenzone in sunscreens. Yeah. And I keep thinking, but what did it do for us? Like, it really didn't bring anything to the table. Like, why are we harping on whether it's an endocrine disruptor or reef safe, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah. No, amazing, like really, really important points. And I think a lot of these discussions are really relevant to so many different parts of somebody's life stages as well, because it's not just as easy to just go in. You need to think of a lot of different other factors, whether you're thinking of getting pregnant, whether you're pregnant, how does that impact your partner, the little ones in your life, and just putting it into perspective like that, I think really, really helps in understanding how an ingredient can actually impact the person, but then also what is behind that product. One of our viewers asked also, does a sunscreen that is water resistant protect better? I guess there are some sunscreens out there that claim or make the claim that they are waterproof. Maybe we can talk a little bit about that before we wrap up for the day.
Yeah, so it's a test that you can choose to do as a brand, right? So like we don't choose to do it. We just find that that's not the use case for our sunscreens. Yeah. So if you as a brand choose to do that specific test, basically the person is immersed in water for 40 minutes or 80 minutes, and then the SPF is taken. And so it's basically saying that after that level of water immersion, your SPF is this number, right? And so, if you're at a beach, certainly that might be beneficial. But to be honest with you, I think we kind of overestimated a little bit, because if you're outside all day, right? First of all, I always tell people, like my daughter's going to summer camp, right? Yeah. So this is something that I learned from my mother. This is the #1 tip for sunscreen application, right? First thing in the morning, before you change into your clothes, you strip and you put sunscreen on from head to toe, and you make that first application the best application of all, right? You're not trying to go around, clothes or bathing suits, and then you miss something or you change your clothes. Yeah. So with my daughter, I know that I'm not going to be with her for reapplication, right? She's off on her own. She's not doing it like, I was in the pool, I'm going to apply. You don't know. You can't control that. So I make that first reapplication the best. Okay. I use sun clothing, hats, glasses, and shades. and
And
sunglasses or shades.
like a shirt or like a sun
Yeah,
shirt or whatever.
rash
Yeah.
guards are the best. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah. The rash guard. That's what it's called. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're so helpful in one, lowering the amount of sunscreen that we're introducing into waterways in general. But in
Hmm.
terms of reapplication, so much more helpful because, okay, fine, you used a water resistant sunscreen. As long as it's still, meeting those other qualities that we
Yeah.
talked about,
Yeah.
sure, right? If you're
Yeah.
sweating or rubbing, but it's not buying you that much more time in terms of use, right? Because Health Canada still says every 2 hours for
Hmm.
extended sun exposure. And I
Yeah.
think that's a good rule of thumb,
Yeah.
touch up, make sure that you've kind of reapplied, but focusing on that first application and making sure that you're using enough and using it properly is always, I find, probably more beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're kind of coming to the end of our discussion. It's just a quick little lunchtime discussion to break up people's day.
Yeah.
Before we end for the day, Sarah, I just wanted to ask you if there were any takeaways that you wanted any listeners to take away today from the sunscreen company, and anything that you wanted to share specifically.
I think just, I know it's a pain to have to turn the bottle around and look at ingredients. And
Yeah.
I see so many influencers being, well, I love the sunscreen. And you're like, well, what's in it? Like,
Yeah.
what is, you wouldn't take Tylenol or you wouldn't take something and not know the active dose and the concentration, right?
Yeah,
So
you're right.
sunscreens are drug products. Treat them the same. Know what's in them. Know the concentration. It won't necessarily always tell you everything about it, but it certainly gives you a really good indication. It's much better than just using it blindly, right? So
Yeah.
being conscientious about what the product is, and what you're using it, I think is a great way to start. And then if you have questions, I know that there's not always, like, we're not even able to put everything on the bottle that we would like, right? Like, we
Yeah,
don't have a
of course.
factor on the bottle. I would love to, but ask, right? Like, we're so
Yeah.
like engaged now in social media. Ask your brand, be like, what's your UVA protection factor, right? Because that's going to be one of the decisions that's going to help me choose, especially if you're my daily sunscreen,
Yeah.
right? So yeah.
Absolutely. So, okay. And that's the thing. It's really about asking those questions, and it's about making yourself aware that, like you said, it is a drug product. So look at the ingredients and really make a good solid choice. And that's really kind of why I started using the sunscreen company's sunscreen as well, because they were just so well formulated, and you guys have such a great team to design all of that. And you have some really amazing people using it as well. So really well-known celebrities as well. So Sarah, it's been a pleasure to speak to you today. I'm truly honored to meet you, and all the amazing work that you and your team does. So I thank you so much from all of us at Treehouse to have given us the time to talk about a topic that should be a year-round topic, not just in the summer.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's so nice to see your face and yeah, connect. And we're always here for questions if people want to shoot any our way. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Have a good rest of the day. Okay. Bye-bye.